Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Nick Talks. And today is the good old Sunday rant. I hope you guys are doing good. We're doing pretty good over here. I got some things that I've been thinking about that I'm going to hopefully go into some depth. But first off, I have a just lovely story. So, obviously, I've been perpetually sick for going on 2 months, for who knows why. I don't know what's going on. But I had a guy come into work, and he came up and was asking me, I've got some problems with my phone. I need to get it fixed. And normally I can just say, hey, the guys who specialize in that aren't going to be here until 10. Keep it moving, just come back. And I was like, yeah, I'll help this guy out. He seems nice enough. I'll see what I can do. And so, I'm messing with his phone. I'm trying to fix some display settings and whatnot. And I do fix one of the problems, but then the other problem just wasn't working. And so I was like, okay, there's, the other guys should be here in about 15 minutes. So if you want to just hang out a little bit. And he's like, okay. And he's like, hey, what's wrong with you? I was like, what? He's like, well, your voice. I was like, oh, yeah. He's like, you got a cold or something? I was like, I don't know what I got, but I've had it forever, and it's really annoying, like over a month. And he's like, oh, that's no good. You got to do something about that. I'm like, yeah, thanks, guy. I know. And so then he putzes off, and then 5 minutes later, he comes back, and I'm thinking, okay, it hasn't really been 15 minutes yet. I don't know what's going on, because normally people just stand there, and it's all awkward when I'm trying to do my job. But I come up, and I'm like, hey, what's going on, bud? And he's like, hey, here you go. And he puts some Alka-Seltzer cold and flu tabs, like a box of them, on the counter. And I'm like, what is this? And he's like, well, so take 2 of those, put them in room temperature water, not hot water, not cold water, room temperature water, and drink that. And then at 5 o'clock, drink some more. I'm like, did you go and buy these for me? And he's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, you sound like you need it. I'm like, holy hell. It was difficult for me to believe, but I was like, you're the greatest guy I've ever met. This is pretty fantastic that you're just going and getting me cold medicine because I sounded sick. Pretty brilliant. I was pumped up, man. It was a cool little moment. A little faith in humanity action. But but yeah, that's a little better. I haven't worn hats backwards in so long that I feel weird when I do. Which is odd because I only used to wear them backwards. But anyway, something else that I would just formulated in my brain the other day was just thinking about, so I don't think that I've been super public about my opinions on YouTube, but I always try to persuade people, people that I feel have a voice. I always try to persuade people to hey, why don't you start your own YouTube channel? Why don't you get it moving now? Because, my reasoning is always that I think this is where we're going. It kind of seems to me a logical next step, especially with things like the metaverse, that everybody is going to have a show and it can be monetized. And, there's enough eyeballs in the world to where if every single person on YouTube had 1 million subscribers, it wouldn't mean anything less for everyone else, attention can be split many, many ways. And it's definitely possible for everyone to find a niche. And even if, say my grandmother just does cooking videos and 100,000 people watch it, that's still an enjoyable thing to do. And so I always try to persuade people, hey, I think this is where we're headed. Why not get ahead of the curve? That was kind of my reasoning for starting anyways. But that got me to thinking, about the future, that what if, so traditionally, societies would have been small or smaller, back to tribes, essentially, to where the community is so tight, where everybody knows each other and looks out for each other. And I was thinking about how, when Hollywood first came about and, radio and TV and large scale productions started really ramping up, or beginning rather, it was relatively difficult to be famous and even more difficult to be like world famous, right? Like very few people reached that status in the early days of civilization as we know it, right? But now, even just in Hollywood, there's tens of thousands of different actors and actresses all over the place that everybody knows that have been in major blockbusters a dozen times, right? And then you have, social media influencers and people who are famous through TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or whatever. And I'm just thinking that the bar has definitely lowered on what it takes to acquire fame and maintain fame. And I think that could be seen as a bad thing, but I think shifting it to more of like an anthropological lens of what if this shift is really just our civilization, our species' way of recreating the community aspect that we have deep wired in our DNA by intertwining everything. So now people say we're less connected, but I can go on social media and see what everybody within a 50-mile radius or across the country or even across the world is doing pretty much day to day, right? Or Twitter or whatever, or Facebook. So we're much more aware of the ongoings around us than we were in the past. And so it could be that all of social media and whatnot has just been casting a greater network around the planet so that now instead of the community being 30 to 60 people in a tribe roaming the plains, it's now everyone on the planet knows everyone on the planet, essentially. Like, is aware of all of the shifting sands of every society. And I think that's kind of cool. I think that's kind of cool that we're, as a theory, I'm not saying this is a fact, but to think of it as if we as humans are so innately hardwired to seek community. And now that population has grown so much to the point where that's sometimes difficult, that we subconsciously are creating methods to get back to community, that we may not even realize it, but just looking at like the podcasting spheres where, say I just start watching Huberman and then I see Huberman did a podcast with Lex Friedman, never heard of him, let me check it out. And then I'm like, oh, I kind of like this Lex Friedman guy. And then I, through there, track Joe Rogan and Jocko and Chris Williamson and all these people that are just creating the sphere. And then through Joe Rogan, you start getting into like a comedy sphere and you expand the web out that way. And Chris Williamson and in some more United Kingdom fellas over there, because he's got some buddies that way. And there's just this net that is forming of people who know each other and are interacting with each other, and then you get politics and stuff like that. And so it's like at this point, I can riddle off, if I took the time, probably hundreds of names of people that I've spent more than 15 minutes watching. Well, we'll up that. More than an hour watching over the past 10 years or so that I've never met in real life, that I've interacted with this person for over an hour, and I remember their name, and I know a lot about them and who they interact with, but I've never met them. That's kind of like a community. And so then if I reach a level of access, I can then reach out to them, and I know what kind of answers they may have or what kind of connections, I might be looking for that they could share with me. That's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. Just a thought. So I call it the new community theory. There you go. Yeah, and to make a long story short, essentially we're just, everybody's going to be famous in the sense that everybody knows everybody. And I interact with people, and whoever I don't know, the person that I do know knows. And then this web is created that spans countries and even the entire planet. Pretty sweet. Something else that I got through that pretty quick. I thought that was going to take freaking 25 minutes to explain, but I guess it's not as crazy as I thought it was. Something else, I saw a quote, speaking of Chris Williamson, some short of his, and it said that the magic that you're looking for is in the work that you're not doing, or the work that you're avoiding, something along those lines. And I thought that that immediately resonated with me, for one, but two, has been increasingly true. And it makes sense when I track, I've talked about like losing some cognitive efficiency, and how there have been times in my life when I've been just like on fire with passion and belief and conviction, principle, just really locking up. And then sometimes that fades away, and trying to look for a culprit there. Like, is this just something that by nature, this, call it some enlightenment, is this something that is just a transient state that passes back and forth, and that is not something that is achievable as a long-term state of being? Or is something, someone, some action diffusing this and changing it to a state of less, right? Basically, when we feel really good and we're really on top of things and things are going great, and then things are not that, is that something that is just bound to fade away by nature so that we appreciate it? Is that built into the fabric of nature, of reality, of our world, so that we, can appreciate the good things? The darkness shows the importance of the light? Or am I just, fucking up in ways that I don't see, and then I'm taking this power away from myself? I don't know, but this, the magic you seek is in the work you're not doing thing makes me believe that, maybe that's it. Maybe it's just that I'm not working hard enough. And I've even talked in the past, bringing this into something else that I've said, is that the times that I feel the most passionate about the projects that I'm working on are when I'm working the hardest on them, right? And so, tie these two together, and it could just be that it starts to go away and it becomes this feedback loop. So say, you get the initial drive or push to do something, and you start working on it harder than you were before. So there's an incremental or exponential increase in effort in a certain avenue of your life. And then as you start working harder on that thing, you start seeing more results. And then that feeds your desire to work harder. And so that, feeds on itself. And it's a system that continuously breeds progress. Well, then let's say, for some reason or another, you take a break one day and then you see less results. And so now automatically your action has curbed the outcome that you're seeking. And then you start to have this backtrack effect, is what I'm thinking. And so then you get back down to where, like, oh, I'm not very excited about this and I don't know why, I'm feeling kind of burnt out. It's like, maybe it just wasn't, you started taking too many breaks. Or maybe this is a more personal thing for me, but it seems like this could very well be the case. And so even over the last couple days, or the last week or so, like, I had a deadline for a video and I missed it. And I did post it the next day, but it was still like I felt kind of deflated. Whereas I've been on a sugar high of YouTube for a while because I've been really ironing shit out. And then I felt kind of deflated after that. And then the next time I went to post, it was more difficult to post a video, to film and edit and post a video on time, right? And so, ultimately I pushed it and did it, but like I could feel that, just the waning of this excitement, just because I wasn't on top of things. And so then, that leads me to believe that if I'm just always on top of shit, then I'm just always going to be excited about life and about what I'm doing and about where I'm going. The issue there that I run into is that I don't know that that is sustainable. Obviously in a perfect world, I would be disciplined enough to where I'm just always on top of stuff. But at the same time, like, vacations are nice. I do like breaks, and I do want to do like there are times that I want to spend where I'm not doing anything productive. You know, like just playing games or hanging out or doing whatever, just going to get ice cream. Who gives a shit? And so I think that building into the programming some way to justify breaks, like, or allow breaks rather, not justify, to allow a break could even increase productivity, and then therefore by extension keep the magic alive to where I'm just always just juiced out of my mind. Although something else, uh, it just seems to be everything is such a multifaceted issue. And, I've been having some kind of slackage in my gym stuff where I'm just like, the pumps are not crazy. I'm not getting the juice that I used to get. And even the size gains and strength gains are not coming as quickly. And I've been like, dude, what the fuck is going on, man? Jesus Christ. And so I was thinking, okay, maybe it's my diet. Maybe I'm just not eating enough. Or maybe I'm not getting enough carbs. You know. So then one day I literally, over the course of a day and a half to 2 days, I ate like 4 pizzas, a whole bunch of bread, and I still got my protein in, but I just crammed in carbs. And I've been getting great pumps ever since. And now I've tried to maintain, like, I'm getting carbs periodically because I seem to fall into the trap of, like, just sticking to protein, which is great, right? And it does lean you out, but it's just not a long-term play. Right. But now, like, even just sitting here, I can, get a sufficient pump and get a crazy squeeze that I couldn't get 2 weeks ago. And that pizza really helped, dude. Tell you what, especially going on 7 days, I think you really got to just replenish those glycogen stores and whatnot. But there's just so much to the human body that I'm only vaguely aware of. I tried iced matcha latte. I've had this matcha in the cupboard for like ages and just never really knew what it was or what to do with it. And so then I just saw a video on YouTube the other day and I was like, oh, I'll try that. I literally just, poured milk in a glass and then heated up some water and blended up the matcha in the little coffee stirrer thing and poured it over the iced milk. And it was fucking awesome. It was great. Plus it's like this beautiful light green color. Pretty nice. I didn't really notice that much energy, but also, like, I drink, caffeine-wise, primarily coffee and, like, pre-workout, which is always pretty much a slam of caffeine. And I've heard that drinking green tea is like a slow release and it doesn't give you jitters, and it's like, it just kind of slowly ups your energy level. And that obviously matcha is just essentially green tea. I mean, it's more than that, obviously, double obviously, but it's supposed to have the same kind of effect. And so I didn't really notice like any increase in energy, but I drink 2-3 of them. It's quite a bit. I wasn't like bouncing off the walls or anything. If I had a couple cups of coffee, I'd be tweaking, dog. Bad news with the scooter though. I was headed to the bank. I drive a moped. Well, we have a car too, but since my car was donated to the state of Florida, I've been riding on the scoot, and it just petered out like halfway, like literally halfway to the bank. And so it was like 2.5, 3 miles to the bank and 2.5, 3 miles back home. And I was like, man, that sucks. Like, it just wouldn't start. And I was like, okay, well, I passed a gas station and a CVS on my way here. Maybe I can pop back there and grab some oil. Maybe that's it. Maybe I just ran out of oil or something. I just wasn't paying attention. And so I walk all the way back to the gas station and CVS and I get some oil. I get a bottle of water. And then I walk all the way back to the scooter, pour the oil in there, still doesn't start. And I'm like, well, fuck. there's not really any way to get out of this. And even if I have my lady come and pick me up, the scooter's still here and we're going to have to get it home eventually. So I might as well just take it now. So I had to push that fucker like just under 3 miles back to the house, which did actually not suck as bad as I thought it was going to. I thought it was going to be tough, dude. I thought it was going to be like the biggest ass. Sunny, middle of Florida. It was like kind of tough, but not really that bad. Plus, like I just took my shirt off and got a little bit of a tan while I was doing it. Had some ladies pull over and scream something at me. I couldn't hear though, I had my headphones on. But I assume it was something nasty. They did look kind of trailer parky, so I'm sure it was something about my butthole or something. Who knows? But yeah, good times. So now today I have to go and figure out how to get that fucker fixed. I mean, it's a 50cc scooter, so I can't imagine that it is difficult or expensive to fix whatever's going on in there. But that remains to be seen. We don't really know. But I have to do it today. Otherwise I'm fucked. I'm slowly, I think, mastering this calm state. Oh, remastering, we'll say. Just being relaxed and not letting things get to me as easily. Which used to be so easy, but, I did completely uproot my life and plunge myself into essentially poverty for over a year, just for fun. And, it did take a toll. And so now we're kind of getting back, but, Ed Milet talks about the emotional home row, which is essentially like the emotions that you experience, because emotions are just chemistry, right? So whether this is truth or not, I think it's a good way to visualize that the emotions that you experience most often are the ones that you're used to and drawn back to experiencing. So if I'm like angry all the time, then it's much easier for me to get angry than someone who's calm all the time, right? And that it's not necessarily just like a natural disposition, although it could be a natural inclination towards a certain behavior pattern or emotion pattern, or from your parents or whatever, sure, but to the individual can be controlled. And since moving to Miami, I've had this just ambient anxiety that creeps in, and that somewhat snuffs out personality. If I'm worried, if I'm anxious, typically part of the anxiety is about others around me and maybe what they're going to think, which is an offshoot of, is this person going to fucking hurt me or not? Like, do I have to fight this guy, essentially? Okay, well then I'm going to make sure that my actions aren't too far in one direction so that it doesn't create conflict. And so then therefore I'm worried about what this person thinks. And then therefore I'm worried about what everybody thinks, right? And so if you do that, go down that rabbit hole, then you kind of tone down your personality so that it's not abrasive. I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to start a problem, just because I made a joke that I shouldn't have. But now I'm starting to be like, turn that the other way. Where obviously I don't want to offend anybody, but at the same time, I'm not going to be overly cautious to where I'm scared that everything will offend somebody. I'm going to think things through, and if it seems reasonable, something to say, like just using my best judgment and going back to trusting myself to think critically about things that I'm about to say or do. To where like, okay, if I truly believe that there's nothing wrong with this action, then I'm just going to do the thing. If I truly believe there's nothing wrong with what I'm about to say, then I'm just going to say it without fear of if somebody gets offended. Because if they do, then we can have that conversation. But it's really not up to me, because everybody's going to get offended about something that I don't think is a big deal. And so then, we can have that hash out. But I'd rather accidentally be offensive and then in good faith solve that problem and be like, hey, whoa, I didn't mean that the way that you're thinking. Let's talk about this a little bit, right? And de-escalate the situation. I'd rather have that than overreact and tone down myself so that I never create situations like that, because more often than not, people are pretty reasonable and they're not going to get offended at every fucking little piece of bullshit that you say. And so then I would be overcorrecting and essentially silencing myself out of fear, when most of the time it wouldn't be a problem anyways. And that's just not a way to live. And it's such a pussy way to live too, is the big thing. Is that like, I feel like a fucking pussy if I'm not saying things because I'm worried what people are going to think, or that people are going to get offended or whatever. Now, sometimes, the fight is obvious, and sometimes it's better to hold your tongue, but that's different. Picking your battles is different than hiding from battle all the time, right? But that's something that, over the last few years has been tough, especially like coming from a particularly liberal city and state, especially during COVID, and then moving to a particularly violent city where things don't really make a fucking lick of sense and people just overreact to the most menial bullshit. So I've just had this both way batter of like, you just don't say shit and you're way better off. And now I'm starting to be like, no, that's fucking pussy shit. Like, I'm ready to have the fight if I need to, but I'd rather have the freedom to say what I want as long as I believe that it is the right thing to say. That was a fucking good grip there. I was ranting a little bit. Hey, Sunday rant. But yeah, I'm starting to get back to that. And it's just like, it's so necessary that the conversation is had. It's even more and more obvious to me that the freedom of speech is so important. It's so important that, like, even if people don't like what I have to say, I still have the right to say it, even if we may disagree. And really internalizing that belief and that structure that is built into our society as an American, right? That I'm going to say what I believe, and I shouldn't have fear that people are going to have some rebuttal, because that's part of the process. If we're going to even get into an argument, it's okay. It's all in good faith. And if you're actually just genuinely being a fucking dickhead and you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, then I can just realize that and be like, okay, it's okay. We don't have to have this conversation. It's kind of like the whole thing with Mulan. I just did the movie review of Mulan not too long ago. And this whole time, like, since seeing that movie, my lovely lady just adores that movie, the live action recreation of Mulan. And since the first time, I've been like, this is the fucking dumbest piece of shit movie I've ever seen in my life. Fuck this movie. Why would they even create this? It's so worthless. And so we constantly have a debate, a heated argument about why that movie is good or bad. And now I've watched it again, and it's like, okay, there's not even a point to having this conversation, right? There's not like the truth is so self-evident that I don't have to argue my point. It's not even worth it to wade into battle there. And I can see how this could be misconstrued and taken or used the wrong way in other climates. This is a movie, so it doesn't really fucking matter. But the point being is that it's not always worth it to sit and endlessly argue a point with someone. Like, if you have done the correct amount of thinking about something, or you've pursued something at depth, and that, like, I've given this enough thought to where what I'm saying makes legitimate sense, then you don't have to prove it to someone who's overly emotional about something. And that's something that I was talking to an old girl about not too long ago, was that essentially, in the same topic, in the same vein, if I spend 30 to 40 hours really thinking through a belief system of mine and why I believe it, and why I should and why I shouldn't, and I come to an ultimate conclusion, and I've really challenged myself, like tried to poke holes in my own argument, and then come up with like, yeah, but that doesn't really work here. Then I have, and then layer on top of that like ample research and listening to other people's opinions, and then really debating that in my own mind. Then I have way more reason to believe that thing. So let's just say drinking water, for example. Let's say I've had, hundreds of hours of experience drinking water. I've really paid attention to how my body responds to it, how my body responds to the lack of drinking water. I've done tons of research on the benefits and drawbacks of drinking a lot of water versus too little, cognitive impairment, cognitive benefit, physiological benefits, say like all this research, all this anecdotal evidence, all this personal experience, and I have all that, then I have a good reason to believe that drinking water is good, right? And then if someone comes to me and they say drinking water is bad, and they just came up with that yesterday, then that argument isn't really worth anything, right? And being able to register early on, I don't think this person actually has given this the amount of thought that I have. And then not even saying that, because that's immediately going to incite anger. But just withdrawing, being like, yeah, okay, we'll just agree to disagree. It's fine. You don't want to drink water, don't fucking drink water. I don't give a fuck. Maybe that's even a little too harsh. Just, yeah, it's fine. It's okay. We don't have to have that. Hash that out. Because that's way better than, like, if I'm trying to convince someone of something that they haven't even thought enough about to understand my argument, then it's pointless. I'm just wasting my breath. It's like if someone was trying to have an argument with me about climate change, and I know fuck all about climate change patterns and the history of the earth and the future of the earth and how much effect humans actually have and CO2 emissions and what countries are the worst. I know very little about this shit. So if someone has done a lot of homework and they start arguing with me about it, they're ultimately going to be wasting their words, because I'm not even going to fully understand everything that they're saying, nor am I going to be able to have a compelling rebuttal that is even worth going back and forth about, right? And so just being able to register that early on is pretty key, and having the calm and the lack of ego enough to be like, yeah, I don't need to pick this fight, because it's easy to fall into the trap of like, I want to fucking win, dude. I want to be right. It's easy to fall into that trap, but it's not always worth it. And so often, like, I'll spend an hour arguing with someone over something, and at the end, nothing has changed. Nothing has been solved, and I realize that I was just arguing for the sake of arguing, which, if that is the point, that's fine. I fucking love a good debate. But if I'm doing it to try and convince the other person that I'm right, and that obviously is never going to happen, then it was kind of a pointless battle. Especially if it was such a non-issue. Like if it was like, how many times do you water your plants a day, 3 versus 4, and we're sitting arguing about that for fucking 6 hours. We just wasted our time, right? But that's something that I've recently been coming in. And I think that's also a direct result of me just fucking calming the fuck down. Is that now when I'm going to have a debate, one, I can go into it with more jokey. Like, it's not the end of the world if we disagree. It's not that important either way, especially like if it's something that I really, really care about and I think is really important and people are actually forming a dumbass opinion that I think should have a better opinion. Like if it's someone that I respect and they have an opinion that is like, how the fuck do you think that? Then we can have that battle. But anything short of that, it doesn't need to be this massive endeavor that is so drawn out, right? It's okay. It's okay. And even, kind of going back to the freedom of saying what I want thing, it's all kind of tied there. It's just this calm of, I'm going to voice my opinion because it's my opinion and you can disagree. And me thinking a certain thing doesn't make me a bad person, typically. There's some pretty far out theories that can be like, that's alarming. But it takes a lot to be like, that guy's a piece of shit because of what he believes, you know? And if you're any sense of normal, it's probably fine. But that was always my concern, is that I'm going to have my opinion shared, and then I'm going to be accused of being a bigot because of my opinion, even though it's like pretty well founded. And so that's, you know, that was realistically a problem. And I don't know whether it was me or the circle that I was within, but it seemed to be, it could be both actually, to be the trend for a while, to where like I was considered on a certain side because of things that I would say and treated as such. And then I would defend myself as such. You know, it was just this whole fucking mess, when in reality now I'm just calm and like, this is what I fucking think. And it's fine either way. And now the people that I converse with are more relaxed as well. So I don't know. There's some kind of weird thing. I don't know if I really explained that essentially adequately. Kind of like if I have anxiety going into an argument, then I'm not going to convey my point correctly. And I'm also going to be more defensive. And then other people are going to be more defensive. And it's just made a whole mess. So if I'm just calm, everybody else is way more calm. And then that way, if people start getting alarmed, I can kind of, hey, you know, it's okay. We're fine. Just relax, right? And, you know, due to this, I believe, I had like one of the best conversations I've had in 2 months the other day about some pretty potentially hazardous material, right? But it went well. It went well. It went so well that the person actually wanted to have another conversation, which could be on here, potentially. But moving on, I will say that I'm noticing a trend on my channel that seems to be of the upward variety, which is cool. Like, you know, I started this channel with 0 subscribers, and for the longest time I didn't tell anybody about it. And so it took a long time to even get like 8 subscribers. Like it took me like months to get to 8. And then it would take, you know, several weeks to add another subscriber or to start seeing an increase in views. And it was like a constant battle. And it didn't help that I would take periods off, but now that I've been more and more consistent and have, you know, been posting for a long time, I'm seeing an uptrend. I'm seeing like a shortening of time in between added subscribers, which is sweet, man. You know, I'm seeing more and more views on videos. I'm seeing more and more interactions, and that's pretty cool. It, you know, it's kind of like, for the longest, I was just making videos to make videos, and, you know, with the belief that hopefully one day this is possible. But then, you know, I made that What It's Like to Live in Miami video, and then I had taken a forever break, like several months after moving to where I am now, and then somebody was like, hey, that video's kind of popping off a little bit. And so then I went and looked, and there was like a bunch of comments and stuff, and they were largely positive. And that was such a reinvigorating force of like, wow, okay, cool. Like there's stuff happening here. And I think that's in large part, well, I was going to do it anyways. So I was going to come back in full force anyways, but it definitely helped gain some momentum of like, oh, fuck yeah, dude. Like there's actually stuff happening here. Whereas normally it's just like me posting, getting 10 views and then waiting till I post again. But now, like, seeing an increase, it really does keep the momentum going and keep the excitement up to where I'm like, fucking A, bud. Like, I've kind of gotten to the point now where I'm going to make them regardless, because I just have to. We're too far into the tank for me to just quit now. But actually seeing growth and progress is pretty cool. And I think that I should definitely cherish these early moments, because I have a feeling, a sneaking suspicion, that journey from those 8 subscribers that took forever to like 30 to like 100 to like 1,000 is going to be way more exciting than the journey from 1 million to 1.5 to 2 million, right? I have a feeling that once you get to that point, they're just numbers that are hard to rationalize. But if I go from like 8 people tuning in to like 100 people tuning in, like that's a pretty fucking substantial increase that I can actually rationalize, and it's pretty exciting. So I'm going to try and do my best to really be grateful and excited about these little jumps up, because increase is increase regardless. And I think that it's easy to fall into the trap of like, oh, well, I'm not making $10,000 a day off this shit. So it's like, until I get to that point, I'm not going to be happy. But just being excited about fucking the baby steps, the part of the process, enjoy the process, right? I think that helps keep the energy flowing. Whereas if I'm disappointed, then it's like, I don't really want to do this because I'm not at 1,000. But if I can just be like, hey, fucking, I got one more subscriber today, that's a fucking win. That's a dub for Nick. That keeps the mind on a more positive note. I will say, jumping back to the anxiety thing, it's so useless generally. Anxiety, especially social anxiety, that I've just continuously noticed, to where like I'll have an interaction with someone and it'll be weird. The vibrations will be off. And then I will spend the next 2 hours thinking about how I fucked up that interaction. And then I'll interact with the person again and it'll be totally fine. And like it didn't even matter and it was never a big deal. Or they were the one being weird about it. So I think like I've started to just really relax. And if something is weird enough, I'll bring it up. Just completely tackle it. This has always been something that I've found to be useful. That as soon as I get the hint of a problem, it's shifting from being on my heels, backing up, to being on the fronts of my feet, attacking the problem. I prefer to be in that position rather than off balance, right? So like I had an interaction the other day where basically I was trying to interact with somebody at work, and they were just like staring at me, not reacting. And it was the fucking weirdest shit I've ever seen in my life. Like not actually like this, but just like staring at me, almost a mean mug. And I waved, and they still stared, and then I said, hey, and they still stared, and to the point where I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I start like reacting, and then I move on. And so like the whole time, I spent the next several hours being like, dude, does this fucking person hate me? Like, what did I do something wrong? Do they think that I'm a freak, or what the hell's going on? And so the next time I saw them, I was like, yo, what the fuck was that? And then they were like, oh, ha ha ha, I'm sorry, I just zoned out, it was so weird. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then it was totally fine. All right, so just going out and attacking the thing. But ultimately, like, the anxiety was pointless. I spent a bunch of mental capacity, a bunch of my bandwidth was spent on fucking useless bullshit, when I could have just been like, yeah, who cares? If they have any negative opinions, I don't give a shit. And then next time I see them, be like, hey, what the hell was that? And then they say, oh, this. And then that's it, right? But I'm trying to move more towards just being on top of social situations. And it's seemingly more and more obvious to me that 9 times out of 10, people are not comfortable enough, stable enough, or confident enough to where I'm the source of the anxiety. Usually, if there is some weird part of the interaction, usually it is them, even though I always assume that it's me, which is probably better than always assuming that it's them. But I always assume that it's me, and then I always find out later that like it was actually them. And that there's usually not a plethora of negative emotion, that I'm just a normal guy. So anything that's weird in an interaction, it's probably not because the person wants to fucking kill me. It's probably just because they're weird, or we're both weird, or the time was weird, or whatever. Like it's not that big of a deal. But all right, I'm gonna fucking wrap this shit there. I got shit to do. I gotta fucking take care of this damn scooter. But thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you if you sat through that. Fucking props to you, because I was fucking just riddling. But as always, thank you for watching. I appreciate you. Hope you're doing good. Hope all the wealth and peace of mind and spiritual enlightenment comes your way. And with that, we'll say, Nick out.